All right, all right. Good morning and welcome to the show. I am Jose Rodriguez,
And Rohi Zachariah.
and this is a weekly jargon. And today, Rohi, we got a sensitive topic, but also something that I think folks here in California have been talking about, or at least those that turned out to vote. And after looking at the turnout, it looks like Proposition 50 did pass. But you'd be surprised what the turnout was in a lot of these counties. I think I didn't see more than 35% total turnout for certain counties around the Central Valley. I think we had closer to 37. I could be wrong, but that's kind of what I saw on the election results yesterday. Nevertheless, Proposition 50 passed, and that's where it's at. So let's start off with that. This is just a local conversation. We're going to talk about it because I think it's important for us to at least have a dialogue on that.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I remember my daughter a couple days ago was asking, because obviously the ads are all over the place, like, what is it, and because everybody's, saying yes and no, and trying to explain to her, I guess in a nonpartisan answer to kind of tell her, if passed, this is what yes would do, and if it doesn't pass, what it kind of continues to do, and it's tough because again, kids, they hear all these things, and especially with propositions like this, I think that was one of the things that if my child, who I would say is fairly intelligent, can't understand the difference between the yes and the no vote, it should be an example of, I'd hate to say some of the processes at hand when describing some of those propositions, I think it's, it should be very cut and dry to know if I vote yes, this is what I'm getting out of it, and by voting no, this is what I'm getting out of it. And I don't know if that was a clear enough message, and if they should be regulated in that. When ads come out, should they be forced to kind of stay in some guidelines so that they don't misportray some of the information they're putting out.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
You're
Rohi.
busy over there pulling
This is what I brought up so that our folks can kind of see the before the Prop 50 and after, and what that's going to do with some of the districts, especially here in the Central Valley. I think may have some impact, especially in some of the congressional districts that represent possibly Republicans, right? And so that we're clear, Proposition 50 was in response to counter, I think, the congressional redistricting that was taking place in Texas. And it seems like this is something that's gaining momentum in other states also, because they see how either party can gain advantage with more congressional seats, right? I mean, obviously, when you have control of a House and Senate, then that's the last thing you want to do is lose that, right? So it's a sensitive topic because I think nobody likes to see any state do any type of gerrymandering. And that term may sound a little harsh, but to some degree, I think when Texas started their redistricting, I think they were doing that to gain more Republican seats. So to counter that, then you had our Governor Newsom go out and say, well, we're not going to stand by and let that happen because California, being the state that it is, mainly blue, they said we can't afford to have this administration continue to expand their policies and their executive orders that potentially hurt, according to him, Californians, right? So in response to that, then here it is. I'm going to leave it to the voters and let the voters decide. And to some extent, I mean, that's very democratic. But at the same time, I don't agree with how it's being carried out, right? This is done in a 5 years before the next redistricting that's given to a commission of citizens that will put out these maps to bring forth and approve. Here, I think it's the legislature that will do that. And again, being that the legislature is mainly blue, then obviously it just seems like it's very heavy on one side.
And I think that was, when trying to describe like districting and the process and the normal process, and to my daughter, and you're talking, the words and what we're doing. If this was, 100 years ago, we would say the terms "we're at war with Texas," right? Like Texas did something and we're revolting and we're going to do something back to count. Like this is war. But in this term, it's great that you put it to the voters. All right, there's a process, but they draw the maps, and let's say in 4 years from now, when they do the census, because that's what they actually need to draw the maps, it comes back different. It's going to be very cut and dry that you didn't do this correctly. But we don't get that choice. Like, right? I mean, like, if this was a true redistricting, it should have been Prop 50 passes, we do a census, and then you redistrict, whatever next year. But not, hey, we have the rules now. We're going to redistrict as we see fit. And guess what? It's in our favor.
Yeah.
That's a process that I don't agree with, because the consensus is what does the redistricting, not, well, just, January 1st, we're going to do it. So.
Yeah, no, and I agree, Rohi, in that it could have been done in a better way, and I think the right way, which is always, allow the process to follow process.
But
right?
There is a way. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know Texas's constitution and how they were able to do that without it violating
legislatively. California can when they put it out to vote.
Yeah,
and this is how they did it. But I think, again, I think it's a democratic way of doing things. I think it's great that people are out there and they have their vote, right? But again, was this the right time and the right place to do it? And I have some reservations on that, only because when someone's doing something and you can condemn this as doing something wrong somewhere, does that mean that you too have to do the wrong thing? So there's that saying that two wrongs don't equal a right.
Yeah.
But in this case, I think people see it in peril that if we don't do this, then our state and the way of California, or at least for areas that are democratic, as far as party-wise, then we're in peril. And like you said, it may be like people see it like an act of, this is against an act of war, right? Almost in a way.
But imagine if Republicans had led the initiative. If Republicans had raised an initiative to do Prop 50, would we be doing the same as Texas? No, because California knew doing Prop 50 was going to be in a Democratic favor. That's the difference, is Texas did it because they know it was going to be going to Republicans. California, if California Republicans didn't do it because we knew it would not favor us. It would never go in our direction. That's why it's not our initiative. That's why the money coming behind it was from that side, and the money behind the yes was from the other side.
Yes.
Yes. So it's the same, but it's not the same.
So being that obviously for us being locals here, especially in the city of Madera, county of Madera, looking at the election results, it seems like overwhelmingly, at least a good majority, it was no, right? People did not approve it here.
Because the color is red here.
Well, yeah, of course.
it should be no,
Yeah, and to that extent, I think, it just sends a message that maybe this isn't something that we see, or Madera County, for that matter, sees it. But, our county to the north, Merced, looking at the results yesterday, it seems like they passed it. All the way down to Kern County, I think it started going. Fresno may have slightly passed it, and then you have Tulare that didn't, and then you have Kern. I don't think they passed it, and obviously all the other bigger counties.
But where's our independent? That's what I mean. If Madera says we don't want it, then you shouldn't be able to touch our district. You should be able to. We these are our lines that we control.
Our congressional district, I think, with Adam Gray, has in the proposed deal, and if I can bring that back up, I believe that did have a small impact. They did cut that down a bit there. So will it have an impact? Definitely. I think that if the proposed lines, certainly, like you said, they favor the bluer Democratic Party, right? And I think, again, preserving those congressional seats is what they felt was important.
But that's the part where, again, it gets frustrating, because they want the seats because of the issue with the presidential elections, but it's the people. I mean, if the people want the change, I mean, they had some of the voting, the mayors and stuff like for New York, and Yeah, I mean, people are going to vote what they want. Why are you concerned? Why do we have to do this? If people want a Democratic president when Trump's term is over, they're going to vote for it. But it's not that way. It's reminding ourselves that we don't vote for the president. It's a different process. We're alluded to, or we feel like my vote counts for who's sitting in that seat right now, but that's not the true process.
And it's funny you say that, because I think when they say, well, we're a republic, well, yes, we're a democratic republic. And in many cases,
which is a word to confuse everybody.
Yep, it does confuse a lot of people.
Makes no sense.
The way I was taught, or I was able to understand it, was that the republic is a framework of how you're going to play the game, right? Think about it as a schoolyard where you have children that are going to play, and you establish the slide, the teeter-totter. You establish all the play structures. The democratic process is, how are you going to play in this playground?
Yeah.
And then there's a way of doing that, right, through democratic representatives that represent the interest of those states, those districts, and what have you. And pure democracy, I think, doesn't really exist in the word republic, but in our case here, this was strictly democratic, where you allowed the voters to decide, and the majority decided, right? And that's what California has when it votes for its representatives, right? What they do at the national or Congress is more of that's where it's more representative based, right?
Yeah, but you know what, and Americans should appreciate what I'm going to say, but you know, when we ask about the Republican and the Democratic, it always reminds me of every time I watch Star Wars. You know, it's always about the Republic who's fighting against the Empire. And I feel like to some degree it relates to who we are, right? If you're part of the Republic, if you are supporters of the Republic, you're a ground roots, you're fighting this, you know, conglomerate that's looking to take over and control every aspect of your life. Do we consider, do I say I'm Republican, so I can associate with them, and therefore Democrats are part of the evil empire that we need to take down?
And I think that's the misconception there, Rohi, is that if you believe in democracy, then therefore you lie with Democrats. And it's just that simple, because you're able to put these two things together. I mean, we are under a republic, right? Again, the terms are, people want to interchange them and stuff like that, but it is a republic. And we have to go back to see, well, what were the founding fathers thinking of at that time? And I think we've had this conversation several times, but Rome was a republic. Rome was a republic that had similar structures, right? They had senators. And at some point, I think they even had some type of council or representatives of certain districts within the people. But I think their framework was part of what the founding founders had used. But they also went back even further, down to Greek, right? How Greek's republic or democratic process kind of failed a bit, because they were purely democratic. And that didn't last either. So I think coming off of a monarchy, especially a king, and how they saw this structure, they didn't want this, like you said, empire king to rule over them. So when they were in this convention, going back and forth as to what powers should the federal government have, well, these are the powers that it should have when states can't resolve certain things, and let's allow. And this is kind of why you've had these three branches of government, so that you can create these checks and balances. And that's the unique part of our republic, is that we have this, and that's supposed to give us balance, right? And in certain cases, though, Rohi, you do see where that can sometimes be manipulated, and or if it's tampered, then we no longer have that checks and balances. And we're coming to a point, especially in our current society today, where we're starting to see two very big extremes. And you're starting to hate the word democratic, and you associate that quickly with Democrats, when in reality, we partake in some democratic process, just what took place yesterday, right? But again, it's viewed like that's evil. We should be a republic. But again, really understanding what that term means and the framework of it, I think the founding fathers really understood that, hey, we don't want this to collapse like these other empires. So the terms, you know, people don't like to hear them, but if you really look at and you do the research, I think we partake in a lot of democratic process, especially when it comes to our elections, Rohi.
But that's the problem. I mean, I guess I don't have the issue with the process, meaning that I'd agree. The fact that this particular item came before the people, but it also then it puts more emphasis on what most people want, which is a fair election, which means that there shouldn't be mail-in votes. That means that when you go to cast a vote, you should have to identify yourself with a photo ID. Like, I think that's where people, like, even in this Prop 50, there's going to be probably a whole group of people that say, well, the only reason they won is because they stole it, just like everybody claims every time there's an election, right? Yeah. And that's where the people want to get back to. I want to feel like all of those millions of votes that were collected correctly, that weren't falsified, that the people aren't dead, you know, and that's something that I think is fair to ask for. But when we ask that to the other side, when you ask that to the Democratic Party side, all of a sudden it's like, oh, no, like, you know, that's just so injustice that we can't even make somebody show their California ID to cast a vote or to make sure they're not voting in two places. You know, I mean, those things do happen on, yes, a much smaller scale, but I think that's what the people, they want to have trust in that system, and that trust isn't there. And why I say that is because we get little tidbits, you know, like this Prop 50 comes for the people, there's the democratic process, but like a massive amount of new law that gets introduced every year that the people have no process, that your senators and your Congress people are putting in, you know, through their assembly bills and Senate bills. The people are frustrated with that part of it because they don't understand that, well, wait a minute, how can you pass this new law and I had zero input into it? So that imbalance really it doesn't exist to where if it's a true democratic process, the people should vote on every single law that goes into place every single year, but it's not. It's here's the law. Oh, by the way, you want to fight it, go spend your money and then go fight it. 'Cause, I mean, that's how it is with the gun industry. Like, we have a bunch of new laws coming in that are very, very overreaching. They still passed them. They approved them. And then it's like, okay, well, go spend your money and go get an attorney and fight it. And maybe in 10 years from now, it'll find out that, oh, it was unconstitutional. And, we're going to remove it.
And you're seeing a lot of those challenges now with some executive orders, right? You're starting to see that unfold, especially what's taking place with the shutdown, right? You're starting to see states now saying, "Hey,
are we shut down?" I feel like we're not shut down. I forgot. I feel like like people said, they're still taking my taxes.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, exactly. But I think when it comes to distributing, more importantly, the SNAP, right? People are talking about this, and judges are putting certain pressures on the federal government to use some of their contingency funds to be able to fund some of the SNAP in certain areas, and in certain states. Certain municipalities are feeling it.
Yeah.
But what we do have, Rohi, and this is what I wanted to come back to, is we do have a representative democracy where you elect people to represent you in Congress, right? And that's where the democracy comes in. Not necessarily a democracy government. It's a democratic government. It's a democratic republic because of this sector. And if it was truly a true democracy, think about it. We just passed Prop 50, right? But what if someone said that the national religion for California now, or the state's religion, should be this, right? Then imagine if people felt very strongly about a certain religion that you weren't really a part of, right? Well, where's my rights? Well, that's kind of where the Bill of Rights are. Those are the minorities that are also protected in this structure of a republic. Is that hey? If we truly left it to a purely democratic process, then you would have a sector of the population that would truly be out and being part of this society or this government, because you would be overwhelmed by what the majority wants, right? And I think that was something that the founding fathers had already seen in history that didn't work, that repeated itself in a way that we're just going to go down that rabbit hole. So it left it open to have a framework in where I think we have a pretty good government or structure. It's just a matter of the laws that we make certainly have impacts in how this game is played.
But I mean, and again, I think it's when people feel their rights, especially when it comes to the fundamental constitutional rights. And speaking mostly with the Second Amendment, because that's where I always feel, again, in our industry, it's the most overlooked. People's frustration with that one, to your point, so California is passing Assembly Bill 1263, and it's what it is. It's to regulate the manufacturing by a person at their own home. That is a federal right given to us already. It's already a federally recognized right. But here comes California, no vote. They passed the law, and basically January 1st, it's going to move to the steps to essentially outlaw the manufacturing of your own firearms. Even though it's protected under the Constitution, even though the Second Amendment right to have guns is protected under the Constitution, you have a federal right to build your own guns. But California says, here we go. Here's our new law, and again, no vote. It's very clearly unconstitutional, but here it is. It's passed. It's going to be in your doorstep January 1st, and now go fight it. Go waste. And then I hate when people say go fight it too, because it's remembering that we paid. It's California tax dollars that made this go into place, and then now you have to spend your dollars against yourself to go fight the state who imposed it upon you. Because I have to raise my own money to get my own attorney, and I'm fighting the state whose attorneys and everybody are paid for by my tax dollars. So all these fights you're fighting yourself. And again, that's where a lot of the process is. People are, I hate to say, are getting to the point to where they are coming to that end. That idea of who we are as Americans, as a country, it's getting whittled away because people are starting to feel like, well, wait a minute, where are my rights anymore?
Yeah.
And to that, it's gone.
And yeah, I mean, to some extent, I think this, like Texas move, California could also be seen because I don't feel like people are just going to be accepting, right? Obviously, you saw the turnout here; it wasn't accepting, and which is I mean, it should be. You should always question certain things, right? I think in a sound mind, you shouldn't always accept everything for face value. You should always question it. So I do feel that this will certainly provide fuel for maybe the Republican Party to say this isn't right. This kind of like to your point, right? And it's kind of like this teeter-totter. It happens in cycles, and it doesn't get any better where this teeter-totter comes to the center, where both parties come together and say, hey, what are we fighting for? Are we really here to preserve America, or are we here to preserve our party only? And although I may bring that message, people may say, well, no, you're starting to sound like, well, I mean, think about it, because I think in a way, Rohi, I don't know, at least me, I'm more of a centrist where I feel like, well, let's get to the middle of how we're going to resolve the issues that impact us here locally, right? And there are issues here locally that impact us that I think, in our cases, we're really nonpartisan. Our deal is to preserve our local economy, provide good services, make sure we have good air quality, make sure we have water. I mean, those are the bigger ticket items. I can't worry about what's taking place like back east in these areas that have impacts in rural areas that, I mean, as it is, I think we have our own problems here. And, these types of actions certainly spell out for people don't always sit well with that. It's not going to sit well. And I think, if anything, it drives a wedge. And there's winners and there's losers. It's almost like a football game. It's not like you don't want to walk away with the draw. Nobody wants to walk away with the draw, and both teams won.
Yeah.
I don't know, for some reason that's been ingrained in us that somebody has to walk away with the victory, and go parade that because that's the way it is. And unfortunately, it at what expense? And the expense, of course, is going to be the people. The people have to bear that expense because now you have to pick a side, and you have to choose a side, and then you have to, go with whatever that party tells you or directs you that should be the narrative that's out there, right? And I don't think that's very conducive to being very positive in any state, nation, and or community. Yeah. But I'm trying to circle back to the original point, right, of how that's going to impact, well, if anything, if there's any impacts. But what it does, the District 9 and 13, currently they're very competitive, would become more favorable to Democrats. Okay, this is going off of what I'm reading here, right? Yeah. District 22, which is David Valadale's just south of us, would shift slightly towards Democrats, but remain competitive. And then you have District 1, 3, 41, and 48 would flip from Republican to Democrat based on the 2024 presidential voting data. Again, this is just what's out there. Now, will there be a rise in Republican turnout? Because again, when I see these turnouts, it seems like they're 30%. Yeah. Out of 100 and some thousand registered voters, or I think in the county, I'll have to look back there, there was probably 80 some thousand, but only like, I mean, a very small amount, you know, I mean, so, and this is county per county, right? When I was looking at these through county and the Central Valley, it seems like the turnout was no more than 35%. Some may have a bit more, but the majority were below 35%. Your thoughts on that, Rohi?
I mean, and I get that that can be an easy argument to say that, okay, we redraw the lines, but it just means they still have to rely on the votes. You know, I mean, like, yes, there's more Democrats in this whatever area now. Those people still have to come out and put those votes in. But again, I mean, it just makes it difficult because, again, going back to the whole process of saying that, like, when assembly bills come in or Senate bills come in, we don't vote on them because we're kind of alluding to it's for the best of everybody. But this is a plain example of knowing that it wasn't going to be for the best for everybody. So we'll leave it up to you guys to make sure that you know this is what you're going to get if you vote for it, and they voted for it. You know, so it's almost like they can wash their hands of it and say, like, we told them how bad it's going to get. They still voted for it. You know, so it's okay now because you go blame your neighbor, don't blame us, kind of ideal. You know, where I can go blame my assembly members for passing this assembly bill that we don't agree with. You know, so I think it's dirty that they do stuff like that because, again, it's turning neighbor against neighbor now. You know, if you have a Prop 50 yes in your yard and I'm a Prop no, now we're clashing where, you know, the other bills we can maybe come together and say, like, wait a minute, that's not fair for all of us. That's you know.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where I was getting to, Rohi, is that you brought a perfect example. If you and I were neighbors and either one of us, I mean, and I'll use this for context, Rohi. Let's just say you said, yes, I'm Prop 50 in your yard, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to paint
small
you
sign,
as that, right? Small sign. And I have one that says no, right?
Yeah,
and the reason why I'm doing this exercise, Rohi, because people would assume otherwise. But we may both be yes, we may both be no. Yeah. But in this case, you know, mine's a no, yours is a yes, and you're very strong about your position. Sure. But we have a good relationship as neighbors. We're very neighborly. We like to, you know, invite each other and stuff. Does that create a wedge between us, especially if we're paying attention to a lot of the social media, we're paying attention to the narratives that media is spilling out, and it draws a certain perception of my neighbor now because I'm saying, man, that guy is just straight up leftist and very radical liberal, right? And you may say, well, this guy's very extreme right and he's very radical extremist, right? And we miss out on the common interest that you and I have, which is we both have kids in the same school. We both live in the same neighborhood. We both have businesses. I mean, we both go to the same church. Yeah. You know, and the fact that, you know, church may be conservative views or what have you, doesn't, but we just have different ways of thinking of how we want to see certain things, right? Yeah. And because of that little view, people can exacerbate that and make it to where now I just don't like my neighbor no more, right? And that's what I kind of see. I don't know if it's here locally. I would want to hope that Madera is more of a, you know, we have we care about our local community more, and I think that's huge. But again, that's me speaking. I can't speak for everyone. Yeah, it's just what I would envision, right? That we would actually concentrate on things that are very important to us here locally, right? We know that our economy is very important. We know that our public services are very important. Public safety is very important. Those things that we do good, those are put aside. They don't matter anymore. We're going to get involved in the national politics. And that's the unfortunate thing, is that we drive this wedge and we get further from trying to come to a common ground.
But if the argument was voting yes for Prop 50 means that, hey, right now we're under Republican control from, these seats, and they're not looking after us, so that's why we need the Democrat, because they're gonna somehow better our lives. I think that would have been a better argument, right? Like if we were just like, look, hey, we're not getting the right support or money or whatever from our representative, and we need to switch that person out. You can't be against that, right? But when you go like, hey, right now you have a Republican representative, we need a Democrat one. Well, why? What are they doing so bad? Just because they're not on your side, just because they're Republican, just because of a name or a title, or because they sit at this desk and you sit at this one? Like, that's the problem I have with it. Is like, do I feel like Madera is well represented? Yeah, I think we're pretty well represented. Maybe that's why we couldn't vote no, because I don't feel like it needs to change at all.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But are we going to be angry if all of a sudden we get a Republican representative here? Like somehow it flips. Like Central Valley doesn't have that Democratic person.
Yeah.
Do we feel like the world's going to end and all of a sudden Madera's going to stop getting the support we need?
Well, I mean, let's go back to, when we did have a congressional, this was like 2 years ago, we had John Duarte was our Republican representative, right? And I recall I had received a call from him when he first ran, right? I didn't know John Duarte I didn't know who he was. I just knew he was running against someone that was already an incumbent or had been in, I don't know if he was an incumbent or not, but Adam Gray was already in the political arena. And I had met with Adam, and I said, Adam, yeah, for sure, I know you. I mean, I think you try. You're a very centrist person. You try to do well for the community. Obviously, you represent the Democratic Party, but at the same time, you always have ties with a lot of the ag. I mean, obviously, that's big here in our Central Valley, and you see other needs for folks in our valley, right? So. I didn't know John, but I did tell John, look, John, if you happen to win, then you have my support, because I can't go back, right? So as soon as he won, he made it an initiative to come to the city and meet with local leaders.
I remember that.
And he developed this bridge to say, hey, guys, he didn't ask about party affiliation. He didn't ask in all that. It's just, hey, I know you. I know what you need. Tell me what I can help you with, and let's work together. And that was a kind of person that, like most of our congressional districts, and I can't speak bad about any of them, because I think they all know the needs for our communities. They roll up their sleeves and they try to see what we need, how can we help, right? And at that time, the city obviously needed some funding for our infrastructure on our sewer lines, and that was part of his task. So when he ran for re-election, again, I told him, hey, I will support you. So I supported him. And again, I got the call from the other congressional candidate, and I said, hey, I did the same for you, just like I do for him. He's working with our community. There's no way that I could do that and turn my back on someone that's helping us. This is a fight on the national level, but here locally, we need support. And right now, he's in the seat, and let's help him out. And it's been like that even with Democrats. I had good relationship with the party, good relationship with Republicans, but it's nonpartisan. But saying that sometimes can come across like, well, no, as you need to be one side only. And especially in today's environment, I think this is where it gets a little conflicting here, because you can you'll have to draw a line for certain folks. And the meeting in the middle, trying to find solutions for our community, it's kind of like that's fading away, and it's not good, really. That's where I see that if we're heading that way, where it's really extreme to where we have to select a side and draw that line, then we're no longer looking at the common interest that we have as Maderans. And that's scary.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, it should be whatever's for the best interest of the people. Like I said, it just hearing when people talk about how they feel about all the processes in place, you know, and I'm sure they, you know, the people up on top know that already that that's their feeling, but it's when that voice gets louder that there's the bigger problems, or they always allude that there's gonna be bigger problems. But most people down at the bottom that are voting or are most affected are the ones that right now feel that they're just not being heard. They're not, you know, you know, especially, I mean, how many people said this was totally unnecessary? It wasn't that it was right or wrong. It was an unnecessary process to get literally a ballot that had one checkbox on it. That just screams into the idea of how unnecessary it was. Like, there wasn't anything else to vote on. Like, I mean, you couldn't take this opportunity to make more propositions that maybe we needed to vote on, but no, we just spent all this time, election officials and ballot location, all this stuff for a checkbox. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's kind of, you know, our point. And again, we did bring up the map because we wanted to show, like, you know, what was the current and what's the proposed. And I think I explained to you how this would impact certain districts, right? And here in our Central Valley, as we talked about, I think when looking at the current or the existing district, it seemed like it shrunk. And then that's District 13. And obviously, if you look at the maps, you'll be able to see where the lines were drawn and what favorable outcomes that may have. Although competitive, you know, it still gives you a probability of how these outcomes will be. So again, you know, we have to put a disclaimer here, I think, early on, Rohi, and these are, I think, our opinions here locally. We always like to talk about, you know, local issues, how these things may impact us, and I mean, obviously, Rohi and I ain't going to stop drinking coffee. I think we share a lot of common interest. And, you know, not only do we sit on the city council, we serve on a service club. Quite a bit of things that we do. We sit here and we jargon it out every week. And we continue to do the work of the people. You know, we continue to do the work that people want. And that's what we do. We both have businesses. We try to, I think, raise our kids right. We try to instill the values that were instilled in us. And overall, I mean, regardless of what your perspective is when you see us, whether we're right or left, you'd be surprised that maybe he's left and I'm right. Maybe I'm left, he's right? But nevertheless, a disclaimer is that a lot of the stuff that we share is our personal opinions of what we see. We do try to provide some content. But at the end of the day, we do want to make sure that that people understand that we're providing just feedback from what we, some of the local news and content that we gather. Roy, anything else you want to end with before we call it a day?
No, just, you know, it's good to, I think this is the kind of discussions most people need to understand that we can have, you know, like you said. I mean, I agree. Like, I think most people have the perception that if we're in a disagreement, we're just not going to talk to each other. And that's not how it should be. It should be able to, people should be able to hash out ideas, and not because I feel like I'm always right, but and that, you know, that you're always wrong, but to give insight to each other's, you know, I mean, people can change their opinions. And that's when politics gets tough, because today you may have a certain feeling, but maybe through insight or through certain things happening, you can modify that feeling and change it. And sometimes they demonize a lot of that. Like, no, you thought this 5 years ago. That Prop 50 was great, you know.
And I think people would like to see us with gloves for some reason. People want to see us disagree, so that it makes it a lot interesting. Bring out the AI gloves. Bing! But again, you know, this is just, you know, it's always good to put that disclaimer that a lot of this stuff that we share is our personal opinion, personal experiences, and there is some content, but you can also do that research yourself and call us on it. You know, get on the show, make a comment. We appreciate that, because all those things certainly help us develop the jargon that we come up with, right? But anyhow, we will be moving. As you see, our studio has changed a bit, so we had to modify that. We'll be moving to a different office, and hopefully still have the same characters playing in the same show. But other than that, we look forward to seeing you next week. And again, thank you for watching. You have a blessed day.